the big Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. fight. And I will tell you, I was not going to buy this shit. I was not going to buy it. On Saturday, the way I was feeling about it a little bit was like I have to have my voice heard with my dollar or lack of dollar. Like I can't contribute to this. But the longer in the day it went on, it started getting to the point where it was just like I don't really know how I'm gonna miss this. I don't really know how I can justify not watching this at all. So I bought it. And I bought it with the expectation that I was going to spend the whole time feeling kind of cringy and uncomfortable. Because as a purist, it's like, I don't want to see these two guys embarrass themselves. I want to see them come in shape, hopefully, and put on a good showing of themselves. But I don't want to watch two guys, who helped me develop my passion for the sport, embarrass themselves. I'm just not interested. I'm not interested in the YouTube boxing shit. I'm not interested in celebrity boxing. As a fan, as a purist, and I'm sure a lot of you feel this way. It's like I'm in it for the sport, and that's it. The entertainment part, the show part, that's all secondary for me. But I'm not the only person watching boxing, and so if you're gonna do a card like this, the best thing you can do is treat it like what it is. It's entertainment. It's entertainment. This was not necessarily an athletic event. This was an entertainment event with athletics. And I say that because the first 3 fights on the card were fucking tremendous, man. This first fight with Edward Vasquez and Irvin Gonzalez, Vasquez winning a split decision. If that fight's not 8 rounds and buried at the very beginning of this undercard, it's maybe fight of the year. I mean, Vasquez was fucking relentless. Gonzalez kept trying to make it a boxing match, and they would clash all the time throughout the rounds. And, you couldn't have kicked it off a better way, like two hungry young guys that clearly have a future going at it, putting their heart on the line and putting on a great fucking show, So that fight was tremendous. Then the second fight, you had Jermaine Ortiz beating Suleiman, I believe his name is Suleiman Sagawa. Hope I didn't get that wrong. But stopping him in the 7th round of another fight that was a complete banger. And these guys were fucking swinging on each other. Very high skill level, but a very high pace, a lot of offense. And Ortiz ultimately just proven to be a little too much, a little too big, too many things in his bag to go to. And then the third fight was Badou Jack winning a unanimous decision against Blake McKiernan. This was not a competitive fight, but it was a good chance to see Badou. We haven't seen Badou in about a year. This was the perfect opponent for him to showcase his skills a little bit and be the star of the show as far as like, this is how you do it. This is how it's done. Being 37, he is a little bit older, but he's still very much has it. He's still fresh. He's still got it. I think he's still got some years in the tank. And following that fight, we had the fucking spectacle of Jake Paul and Nate Robinson, with Paul knocking Nate Robinson out in the 2nd round. I don't like this shit. I don't like this YouTube shit, man. I don't like that. I don't like how these guys get to cut the line just because if you're Nate, you're a professional basketball player. If you're Jake Paul, it's because you have millions of views on the internet, vlogging your life and doing prank videos and whatever. I got no problem with any of it. I love basketball. Don't have a problem with how Jake Paul spends his time and his money. But I don't necessarily like that it's on these cards. And I don't like now that somebody like Jake Paul, who's a professional fighter, can get away with fighting people that aren't professional fighters. The more experience he gets, the more dangerous that is. So the more the commissions just sort of allow him to pick who he wants to fight just for the spectacle of it. Like, let's see this YouTube kid knock out famous people. At a certain point, he's going to have to fight quality professional boxers, or he's not going to be able to fight. That's my opinion. I think at a certain point, he'll get denied. If he has 2-3 more of these where he's fighting people that have never boxed in their life, and he's on his 4th, 5th, 6th fight, he's going to have a hard time getting a license unless he fights somebody that has some professional experience. You know, and if you're Nate, it's like, and I know everyone is saying this right now, but you don't play boxing. It's a whole different thing. It doesn't matter if you're a professional athlete. It really doesn't in boxing. You know, I've been in gyms before where I've looked at a guy spar and I've watched him, and I've been impressed with what he does. And, you know, wow, he's got great speed. He moves real good, da-da-da-da. And then you get in the ring and you spar with them, and it's like, I think I can handle this. You know, they fall for your feint, or, you know, you can get your jab to land how you want it to, or your timing, they can't get your timing. And then there's times where you're in the gym and you see a guy spar and you're like, I don't get it. You know, whether be it that they have a hard time with somebody you sparred with, or they don't physically look impressive or imposing. You know, I've sparred with like 40-year-old hairy guys where you just don't necessarily, like, it doesn't look like much when you're outside of the ring, and then you get in the ring with them and there's like a weird timing, or there's an expertise in what they're doing that's something you didn't necessarily expect. It's like, wow, every time I throw my fucking jab, I'm paying for it. Or, you know, this guy's punches are so slow, but they keep hitting me, and normally I'd be able to get out the, you know, whatever. But it's like, you don't really know what you're looking at until you're in there with it. And that's kind of maybe what Nate discovered. It's like, okay, just because you can hit the bag and look pretty on hitting the bag, and you think that this kid's not athletic, he's not coordinated, that's not how it works, man. You could take all that fucking basketball experience and shove it up your ass. And anybody that's like LeBron James would knock out a fighter. It's like, you don't know what you're saying, man. I guarantee you put LeBron James in with Anthony Joshua, he's not going to last. There's no way. It's a different fucking sport. So I hope there's a humbleness that comes with these celebrity fights, that they understand that they're not fighters. I think Jake Paul does understand to a certain extent that he's different. He's not calling out Canelo Alvarez. He's not calling out Golovkin or, you know, or Usyk or somebody. He's not calling out real fighters. So he knows what he is. But at a certain point, it's like, you fought enough where you're a pro fighter now. And so there's consequences to being a pro fighter. You have to fight other pro fighters, and you might lose. You might get embarrassed. You might get fucking hit. You know, we've yet to see this kid get hit, really. But, you know, and then there was the main event, Mike and Roy, you know, and I thought having Snoop on the commentary being silly and not treating it like, oh my God, this is the matchup of the century, and treating it like it's 2001 or 98 or whatever. I thought that was good. I felt like it was addressed in an appropriate way. I thought Mike was in great shape and looked way better than I thought he was gonna. He was much more athletic and coordinated. You could really hear the thud on his body shots. And the first 4 or 5 rounds, you could see Roy was kind of huffing and puffing a little bit, and I think it was more physical than he anticipated. I think Tyson hit harder than he anticipated, and those body shots did a number on him. And I think Mike was in better shape than Roy, frankly. But somewhere in the 5th, 6th round, like, the car started for Roy, and he got, you know, he did his Roy Jones thing with the fast, flashy combinations and the moving around and the dancing. So and then they wound up calling it a draw, you know. So in my mind, it's like, is it a draw? I don't know. I wasn't fucking scoring it because it's not an important fight. But if you look at it, it's like the front half is Tyson, the back half is Roy. Okay, I can deal with that. And you could see afterwards, Mike had a good time, man. It was cool to see how excited he was about it, you know, and how much he enjoyed himself and enjoyed the humanitarian part of it. Because you got to remember, that was the big thing for me. Like, all of the proceeds of this card went to giving PPE to first responders. So now the cause is bigger than everybody just getting rich tonight. That's where I was sold on it. And I was like, all right, this is bigger than the sport. And Mike's made it bigger than the sport because he's not making it about him. You know, he's making it about the cause. And, You could see Roy was a little like, God damn, those fucking body shots are hard, man. And you could see he was like, there's a reason there's a bucket list item. Like, because there's nothing like this guy. And you could see, man, Mike is still a fucking brick. He's not fighting anybody serious. There's no way. But if he wants to keep fighting former champions for charity and putting YouTube stars on it, and then on top of that, putting young talent and putting genuine boxing talent on those undercards, maybe it's not all bad. Maybe it's not all bad. Maybe it's really like, if Jake Paul wants to play the clown, but what it does is it forces a whole different generation of people to sit down and watch 2 hours of real boxing beforehand and take that in and learn. Because there's people, their whole understanding of the sport right now is the Paul brothers and Ryan Garcia. And that's everything they know about boxing. Maybe if Jake Paul can continue respecting the sport and continue making that distinguishment, like, yo, I'm not crossing over into this real thing. I'm kind of doing my thing, but maybe I can put you on to something that I love, because you could tell he really does love this shit. You could tell he really does love boxing, and maybe if he can be that guy to be like, look, I'm coming at it from a different angle, but show these guys some love. I respect that. I really do. I think he could use his platform to expand the sport in a meaningful way. And so can Mike. These guys really gave guys like Edward Vasquez and Irvin Gonzalez and Jermaine Ortiz the opportunity to shine on a different kind of platform. There's a weird kind of like reverse like capitalism thing where it's like, how is it that the spectacle fights are the main events? But hopefully it's not always like that. Hopefully there comes a time where the public has an appreciation and a hunger for the sport in its finest quality, that fights like this will be the appetizer. And what they really want to see is the real thing. But either way, I think it is a good thing that these guys get this platform. And I've always been against this YouTube boxing shit, but it's really, it depends on its role. If its role is to enable younger people, like people, I'm 27, people even younger than me, to discover the sport and not be a competitor to the sport. Like, you're either into Jake Paul versus Nate Robinson or you're into Danny Garcia and Errol Spence. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think they can mix together and one can help the other. And hopefully Jake Paul loves the sport enough to continue doing that in his platform. And also, it didn't hurt that there was music stars. Snoop Dogg, Wiz Khalifa, YG. There were some cool performances. I think that night treating boxing like entertainment and not treating every fight card the same is important. Give prestige where it's due, and provide entertainment when that's what you're providing. You know what I'm saying?